All right, so they talked us into sitting down again, and we're at a monumental spot with Ascension right now, where 20 years ago, you were in a spot where you kind of formed Ascension, put it together, had the brain, the brain idea of this is where you think we're heading. 2003, you were in a conference up in Atlanta. Tell me a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, so there's a conference called Catalyst, and what was unique about Catalyst, it was basically a gathering for leaders, from kids ministry to youth to college ministry to senior pastors to worship.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, like, that whole week there was something for everybody. So I went up with the local church that I was a part of, and basically was kind of helping out with some college ministry stuff, but I kind of just tagged along. Kind of one of those, just throw Jamie in the car and let's go up there.
Nice.
And I remember it was a night session, and David Crowder was leading worship. And I just felt very strong, just the Lord speaking, saying, hey, I want you to go back home, and I want you to try and get the churches together. Because what I saw that night was worship of all denominations, multiple generations, and my heart was really stirred.
So I look around churches today and I see some of that going on. What was the church looking like in 2003 when you had that kind of feeling?
Man, not what it looks like today. When we came back, we felt like the areas that we needed to pursue this was in the worship, but not just a gathering for a night of worship, because honestly, that wasn't happening at churches in 2004.
Right.
Right now, almost every church has at least one night of worship on the books for each month.
Sure.
For the most part.
Sure.
Back then, in 2004, churches weren't doing Friday nights of worship. So we saw a void in that area, and we were like, man, let's gather the churches together. Not about a name, not about a church. And let's just get people together and ignite a passion within the local church.
Yeah, you hit so many buzzwords right there.
I did. Things that we have used for 20 years.
Yeah.
Do you want to unpack it?
I think we need to. So you hit, not highlighting a certain ministry or a certain church. When I'm going to jump ahead because, you came back, you had the idea of Ascension. We started doing worship nights, 10 a year. For 10 years we did them. It was never about the church or the location where we were doing it in. And that was a kind of a rule that we had. It wasn't about the speaker that happened to be there that night or the church that they were a part of. And all the way down to our team even, that we brought in. It wasn't the same team every week or the same team every month. We had core people that we'd cycle through, but every time we got on stage and we started putting an event together, it was, let's pull some from this church and some from this church and some from these groups of people that are, associated with us. And we'd put the night together, find a church that would let it. Talk about how hard was it to find churches that would let us come in when it started?
That was probably the hardest thing starting out.
Why?
Honestly, pastors were very protective.
Sure.
And they should be. They're protective of an outside group, organization coming in to their church. And the biggest thing that I would encourage is like, hey, there's so many churches within rock throwing distance of your church. Let you lead in this opportunity for the church to gather at this night of worship. We're not going to mention your church, even if you want us to. You're not going to be the cool church.
Yeah.
We're not going to announce it, and we're not going to announce the churches that are coming to be a part of it. And I think the coolest part was within our team of band, worship leaders, tech, volunteers. I mean, we would probably have 15, 20 different churches represented before the first person would come through the door.
True.
And, our heart through all this was always to shine light on other than Ascension, shine light on things that are happening in the community. So every month we would highlight a different ministry organization. And I mean, after you finished a year, it was so cool to look back and see all the different ministries of like how God's hands moving in our local communities, overseas. And,
Right.
So
It's funny because this past year, Jan and I got in a spot where we were at had some extra money that we were looking to give away, and we went back to somebody that we highlighted in one of those years.
Wow.
They're with Wycliffe Bible translators, and they've stayed with them for I don't know how many years they've been part of them now, and we're like, let's up our giving to there, and so it's just like all those years way back there, to be able to just kind of carry them up forward and provide a little bit more there. I was like,
awesome.
Such a God thing, It's just like a little bit here type of thing. It's kind of the way Ascension was kind of thrown together it wasn't thrown together, but
there was a lot
as it came together.
Absolutely. I think the cool thing that I would love is like after an event, hearing from the pastor.
Monster melt?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we would always definitely go eat afterwards. But it was to see the pastor of that church that let us come in. It was like just for him to see his congregation worshiping, but allowing the church to come in and get encouraged, to send the church out to be the church.
Right.
I think some of the stories we would hear at that local church for months, past the event, of how it just ignited a passion of worship within that home church.
Oh, yeah.
So, everything that was centered around events was honestly to gather the church, to wake. Oh, one of the other little sayings we had was, Ascension event was there to wake the sleeping giant. That if the church would wake up and be the hands and feet, then half the things that the communities are dealing with would not be dealing with. So, those gatherings were like, man, we want to wake the church up.
It was funny to watch. It was hard to find places to start with, but as the years went on, years 2, 3, 5, 7, it wasn't a hard thing to find places towards the end there. It was more of okay, here's our 7 staples that we're going to go through, and maybe we'll get one new spot that we haven't been in before, because getting the invite back was never a hard thing.
Yeah.
From the time that they opened the doors to us to the time that we did that final walkthrough and put the vacuum cleaners away and made sure that we left it better than we got it. It was a fun relationship that we had with the churches.
One of our little sayings is, because churches were always concerned with how the church is going to look after the Friday night for their Sunday morning worship.
Right.
And our tagline is, we always leave the church better than we found it.
Right.
And I think and these events were all volunteers. Like there was no one paid. The musicians weren't paid, tech guys. I mean, Stephen with AVL, and Will and Justin Locke. I mean, everybody would come together and bring equipment for these events. And it was awesome. But at the end, like, this wasn't like you come and play and you leave. No. We're going to serve. So when we're done playing, after we connect with everybody, teardown happens, vacuum cleaners come out. Right. And I'll tell you, man, when those lights come on, there was a lot more dirtier in those churches than we found it, but we made sure it was clean when we left.
Absolutely.
So, it was a huge ministry for the church. And we also really helped clean the church while we were there. So
it was fun. So we built a network of musicians over the years there. And early on, you were taking phone calls like they were going out of style on a Saturday night, Sunday morning of Jamie knows a bass player that can fill in for this. Jamie knows a drummer that can fill in on this event. Talk a little bit about how that kind of helped morph Ascension into something more than just an event-based ministry.
Yeah. You know, we always wanted to resource the church, and at the beginning, resourcing was gathering the church. Um, but then, like you said, I mean, the calls were coming. I mean, obviously, we were putting on these monthly events, and musicians were coming. We really kind of saw an opportunity that the church really needed help in, because Saturday night a drummer
Right.
would cancel, and instead of going into an acoustic set, by having an option to help resource a drummer to that church, we were like, man, I think maybe this is the next layer of Ascension Worship. And 2010, we launched the Ascension Network. It was very low key. I think we maybe had 2 or 3 churches the first couple of years.
Sure.
You know, we were trying to figure it all out.
Right.
And you know, you had a saying through the years with it. We called it music missionaries.
Yeah.
You know, we really, you know, one of our, you know, really good friends, Jeff Doom. You know, we were good friends. A lot of us were good friends with him. You know, he was manager of Guitar Center, which Ascension pretty much helped run and spent money at Guitar Center. But you know, he started serving the network, and we found that the music missionaries were, you know, musicians we would send to a local church to help them in that time of need. But that musician would actually help train up musicians at that church. And I always remember Jeff always saying, you know, one of his favorite things was going back to the same church, even 6 months, 8 months later, and seeing that bass player that he kind of helped, you know, kind of train up and learn his craft a little bit more. So, you know, we loved Jeff, and he was a huge blessing, you know, Angie and all them. But, you know, so just the interaction of the musicians going in and helping that church in the last minute.
Which he was a cool story too from the get-go, where when he first started playing with us, he wasn't even saved. And had to reach out to the pastor that we were, you know, he was looking for somebody, and I mean, it was Manny. So I mean,
he was part of Ascension.
Ascension, yes. and I mean, a heart like there's no other, you know. So he reached out to him and said, hey, we've got a guy that wants to play and doesn't really know the Lord yet. Got a problem with that? And Manny, you know, just like a pastor, grabbed a hold of him and mentored him and introduced him to the Lord. And Jeff ended up, him and his family, I think, all got baptized.
His whole family got baptized.
Yeah,
about a year and a half later.
Yeah, so it was a cool opportunity to be able to watch, you know, Jeff go from walking through the door to mentoring other people into, you know, doing more with what their craft was.
And he ended up being able to be a worship leader.
Yeah.
When I think they moved up in, was it Maine? Maine, yeah. Maine. So just to see a complete life change was really cool. So, so 2010 we launched the network, and it really took off in the sense of really filling that void that we felt like we needed to fill for a resource in the local church.
Well, let's go a different direction with resourcing the church. We tried different things. You know, we've had some things that took off and we're still doing today. We had things that we looked at and thought they were important, put some resources into it ourselves, and watched it fade away because it wasn't that important. One of the things that we spent some time with was gathering. You know, it started from the very beginning, gathering people from around the community, pulling them into a team together, and sharing our gifts together as a group. Talk about the collective a little bit and about how that's kind of one of the things that we're still doing now.
Yeah, which is interesting because I'm going to tie in the network.
Okay.
So from 2004 to 2013,
Mm-hmm.
The DNA of Ascension was events.
Yeah.
And it was probably the third event into 2013 that we actually finished. It was at Murray Hill Theater. It was probably one of our best
Fantastic event.
ones that we've ever done.
Yeah. It's album cover.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. One of these over here.
Yeah.
But I remember driving home that night off of like the mountaintop experience, and I wasn't thinking about the next event.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really weird and very concerning,
Sure.
and a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. You were holding on to events at that point still.
Yeah.
Jim and I were ready to move
Y'all
on.
were ready to move on. But I'll tell you, so
Yeah.
those events were on Friday night, and every Monday night, we always had our Ascension meetings.
Yeah.
We still do, 20 years later.
20 years later.
And I remember walking in to Parkwood Baptist, where our office was at the time, about the size of this desk. And no, and but I remember thinking, man, someone is going to throw stones, and it's going to get out of hand because I'm going to say, I feel like the Lord is saying we have to stop the events.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was probably a table full of 8 or 9 guys at that time, and girls, and mentioned it, and it was across the board. Everybody felt the same.
Yeah, it was time.
And so we went from June of 2013 to no more monthly events.
Right.
And we really felt like we wanted to gear towards the network through the songwriting, which we'll talk on.
Mm-hmm.
So we stopped all events.
Mm-hmm.
And 2018, we felt like, you know what? We're not necessarily going to go back into the events, but we're going to create the Ascension Collective,
Right.
which was going to be our event team for conferences, camps, for nights of worship if churches wanted that to happen. So 2019, we put together a team of worship leaders from different churches across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And with the same heart of the events team.
Right.
We just copied and pasted that over to the Ascension Collective. And to this day, we still do camps, conferences, nights of worship.
Yeah.
It was really cool that kind of God just kind of said, hey, it's okay to kind of open this back up.
Mm-hmm.
You were obedient with shutting it down early on, and I've got great plans for the next chapter.
Right.
And that next chapter is the collective.
And we had a bridge there where we were recording music, early on with the events and doing CDs and stuff like that. It was just kind of perpetuating that music across the event platform. And then as those kind of faded out, it opened more of the opportunity to do some of the songwriting and the other music recording stuff that we needed to do in order to kind of take advantage of the network that was building and that God was providing in front of us. So we had a person come over to us at a conference in Orlando from England, which we were amazed that we had people hit the map on our website that said, hey, we're part of Ascension Network. We grabbed this guy and asked him, hold on, you're from England? Why are you part of our network? What does this mean? Talk a little bit about what we found out about the music, difference between American music and music overseas.
Yeah. So just resources alone for tracks, for, sheet music, just what it costs here is not the same what it costs in South America, Europe, everywhere. And that's where we found him. And it was like, look, the resource you guys are giving out for free is huge for our church because we have such a low budget that, it's hard for us to, grab new songs and have resources until I found, what it meant to be a member of Ascension Worship and get these monthly resources. So we had kind of launched in 2013 the City Worship Project, and that was songs from the church to the church.
Right.
And starting end of 2014, we would release almost, 9 or 10 songs a year. And songwriters would submit songs to Ascension. We still do that today. Submit songs to us. We grab those songs that we think would be the best for the local church as a whole.
Right.
And in the studio, we record them, get resources, get tracks, charts. And once a month, we would highlight a new song and send those out as a free resource.
Yeah.
And, obviously, through these last couple of years, some different things have changed, but we're still on track to still do more of that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know everything from the first one that we did to the one that came out a year and a half ago, I think now, One Voice.
One Voice.
It was the first one that went multilingual with us. And so it's cool to see how those little things, that are transitional pieces, how God helps perpetuate and just keep things rolling, opens new doors for us. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna cut you off.
just with the One Voice, we were releasing all these songs and we were noticing like Brazil, the downloads were crazy in there and this was happening. And we're like, man,
Yeah.
It's in English. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, but they're having such a huge impact.
Right.
And we kind of shared with the team on a Monday night. We're like, how cool would it be to get someone to translate some of these songs, then get it sung in its, language and stuff like that. And all of a sudden we kind of put this out into the network. And one Monday night we're like, man, let's kind of put out just a social media post of, is there anybody that would like to translate in Portuguese and Spanish? And the overflow of response led to translate in One Voice, and then having somebody come sing. It was a really surreal moment to see that.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw this as the last thing since we've just got a few minutes left here. We did events for free, and we've released a bunch of music and given it away. And part of the vision that you had in 2004 when you launched Ascension was for it to not be a burden on a church or an individual or a group of people. At the same time, you also launched your own personal business. Why did both of those happen at the same time? Or maybe a better question, what was the result of both of those happening at the same time?
Yeah, so my dad was always entrepreneurial, and at a young age, kind of taught a lot of principles. And when I felt the move of God to start Ascension Worship, also felt like it wasn't going to be something that was going to be, this is your job per se. And at the time, Crystal and I actually we got married in 2004 also. So it was kind of like the big whammy, 2004, you're going to start this ministry, you're going to start a business, and you're going to get married. So in 2004, Ascension definitely wasn't making any money, and definitely not enough to support Crystal and I.
Sure.
But I knew that as both grew, I wanted to make an income in the pool business and not pull income away from the ministry.
Sure.
I wanted Ascension to naturally grow and not be worried about a salary, not trying to worry about, making financial decisions over ministry decisions.
Right.
And God has totally blessed that. God has blessed you coming on board in 2006 with the same heart, and Jim coming on board in 2007.
Yeah.
And to see the three of us grow these last 18, 17 years, with each one of y'all having your own businesses, and God blessing that. And to this day,
Yeah.
We do it because we love it.
Yeah.
We don't do it for a paycheck because we haven't gotten one of those yet.
Right.
So,
and on purpose.
yeah.
Because we've had opportunities when we could have, and as a group, we've talked each other out of it. You know, it wasn't a hard talk. That was that was pretty much spend it somewhere else. You know,
let's hire somebody else.
God's taking care of
the
us.
team.
Let's expand the team, expand the reach, do something different with that money. And it's been fun to watch. You know, God allow us to make those decisions.
Yeah, I tell you, there was no regrets. Actually, complete opposite in the sense of, you know, to see God bless those decisions early on. And, you know, when I think for all those years, all the events we did, I don't think we made $1 on that event, even with the merch. And it was so funny. We did one conference, our own conference we decided to do in 2011. It was called This Life Conference. Yeah. And I mean, we thought we were big stuff. You know, hey, we are going to charge from this because we are bringing in speakers and stuff like this. Yeah. And it was probably, what, 2 weeks before, and we were like...
We had tickets printed.
Yeah. We're like, who are we kidding? Like, let's do it for free. So, you know, we were really bad in that sense, but really good at the same time.
Absolutely. You blessed every opportunity put in front of us.
Yeah. So... Yeah.
Very cool.